What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to do my UFC 314 full card predictions. As always, I'll go rapid fire through the prelims and then extended breakdowns for the main card. So starting with the early prelims, we got Nura Cernoli versus Haley Cohen, and I got Cernoli by decision. Next, you got Trayshawn Gore versus Marco Tulio, and I got Tulio by first round KO. Then we got Sumo Darji versus Mitch Raposo, and I'm going to say Sumo Darji gets back in the win column by second round TKO. Then we got Cedric Dumas versus Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. This is a pretty close one, but I'll go Oleksiejczuk by third round TKO. Then we got Darren Elkins versus Julian Erosa, and I like my fellow Seattle native Erosa here by first round submission. And speaking about Washington guys, we got Chase Hooper versus Jim Miller. Now, I don't know how Hooper got another 40-year-old opponent, but he should get Miller out of there. So I got Chase Hooper by second round submission. Then we got Yan Xiaonan versus Verna Jandiroba. Now, I'm a bit surprised that Xiaonan is the underdog here. I think she's the much better striker. Obviously, Jandiroba is the better grappler, but I think Xiaonan can keep it on the feet for the most part. So I got Yan Xiaonan by decision. And then last fight on the prelims, we got Danny Ige versus Sean Woodson. Another close one. Ige's a tough cookie, but I do think Woodson will be more accurate on the feet, land a bit more volume. So I got Woodson by decision. Now on to the main card, Nikita Krylov versus Dominic Reyes. Now Krylov has been out of competition for 2 years. He last fought March 2023. Whereas Reyes, after the 4 straight losses, he has won his last 2 fights. So he's on a bit of a resurgence. That being said, I'm still kind of skeptical on Reyes' chin and his ability to take damage. Krylov, he has a lot of power. He throws a lot of big shots. Maybe he's not as technical of a striker as Dominic Reyes. I do think Reyes is more accurate, the clean boxer. But Krylov, in big exchanges, he's able to land those shots. And I also think Krylov will mix in the grappling early. If he gets that early takedown, maybe he chases ground and pound over submission. So I got Nikita Krylov by first round TKO. Next, you got Yair Rodriguez versus Patricio Pitbull. Now, I wish Pitbull joined the UFC a couple years ago when he was on top of the Bellator world. Very dangerous guy. But he's still in a good spot. Even after getting KO 2 years ago, entering the UFC at 37 years old, he's still getting a top 5 opponent in his debut, and he could be in line for a title shot later in the year. Now, the game plan for Pitbull is clear. Mix in the takedowns, maybe land some ground and pound, mix in some power shots as well on the feet. But I do think Yair will be faster on the feet, definitely more accurate with his kicks, his right hands. He'll be a bit sharper, land more volume. So I'm going to go Yair Rodriguez by a close decision. Next, you got Bryce Mitchell versus John Silva. Now, I'm very excited for this fight with all the trash talk in the press conferences, the cringe back and forths, even though they are funny. But both these guys have a clear path to victory. For Bryce, it's get the takedowns early, control Silva on the ground, maybe get a submission. And for Silva, he has to keep this fight standing, let his hands go. Now, who do I think will be more successful with their game plan? I'm going to go John Silva. He's the much faster guy, the far more explosive guy on the feet. He's got great kicks, good straight right hand. I do think he'll stuff the early takedowns, most if not all of them. Keep this fight standing, land the big shots. So I got John Silva by second round TKO. On to the co-main event, we got maybe the most 50-50 fight on the card. Michael Chandler versus Paddy Pimblett. Now Chandler, he is completely unpredictable in fights. Either he lands that big shot early, or he lands a big shot, doesn't find the finish, and finds a way to lose the fight. So who knows what happens in this one. Now, if this fight goes to the later rounds, Paddy Pimblett should win. He's a slightly better grappler, especially BJJ-wise. He's the younger guy. He should have the better cardio. He probably has the better chin. But speaking of Paddy's chin, he leaves that thing up in the air. So Chandler can definitely clip him. And that's what I think is going to happen. Paddy, he leaves himself open at times. Chandler, he's got a really good signature right hand to the body, left hook up top. That's a shot he knocked out Dan Hooker with, dropped Charles Oliveira with in the first title fight. I think he can land that same shot on Paddy Pimblett. So I'm going to go Michael Chandler by first round KO. And lastly, in the main event, we got Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez for the vacant featherweight title. Ilia Topuria is now moved up to lightweight. I'll do another YouTube video on that soon. But these two have a really good shot at a vacant featherweight belt. Now, I do have my concerns with Volk's age and chin. A 36-year-old featherweight coming off 2 knockouts shouldn't win the title, right? But at the same time, he's a lot more skilled than Diego Lopez. He's the better boxer, the better wrestler. Lopez does have a tendency to fade with his cardio. And I think Volk can really stick to his game plan in the last 3 to 4 rounds. Stay behind that patented jab. He has a really good 1-2, the leg kicks, mix in some takedowns, some control. The more he mixes it up, the more I think he'll have Diego out of his comfort zone. So I'm going to say Volkanovski takes over this fight late, and I have Alexander Volkanovski by decision. But yeah, those are my UFC 314 full card predictions. Let me know what you guys think, and be sure to like, comment, subscribe, etc. It really helped me out. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.